Okay, so we are continuing. We're picking up again. I think we left off before the holidays, so it's been quite a bit. A little bit of a break. But we're in section 4, chapter 4 of the Tzemach Tzedek's Mitzvah Haamonas Elokus. Sorry. So that is the Tzemach Tzedek's, the third Rabbi of Chabad, and his analysis and in-depth exploration of the mitzvah to believe in Hashem and understanding exactly what that nature of that belief is. So we're not going to do an entire recap of all the 3 chapters that precede, but just what's necessary to know in order to go forward. So, namely, the whole discussion was predicated on a dispute, if you will, between Rambam and Maharal. Okay, let's remember that Rambam and Maharal never met each other. They're centuries apart in different continents, different countries. But as with all of Torah, discussions are alive and ongoing, books are alive and ongoing, so you can have a dispute between people who never met each other, at least not in human person form. So, Rambam was of the view, the way he described it, is God is the known, the knower, and the intellect all in one. That was Rambam. In other words, our human intellect is comprised of 3 components. As with everything in our lives, that's composite. Everything is a composition of a bunch of different smaller things. So is our intellect. Specifically 3 things. There's me, then there is my mind, and there's the information I know. There are 3 distinct entities. And I use my mind to acquire information. That composition of 3 things inevitably means change. Every time I learn something, I change. I have to exert effort, use my mind. That's already a change. It wasn't being used. Now it is being used to acquire information. That's another change. I didn't know. Now I do know. Hashem does not change. And if Hashem knows things, it cannot be known the way we do, where he's finding something out, as if like the universe is somewhere out there and God uses his mind to figure out what's happening in the universe. That would imply a change for God. That cannot be. God is absolute one, unchanging. And therefore, says Rambam, the fact that he uses his intelligence to know, his intelligence and the things he knows are all one. He knows himself, he knows creation, because all of creation is from him. So it's not as if he goes out somewhere else to find out. It's all within him. His intellect, his knowledge are all one. He concedes that it is impossible for us to understand what that is, because our knowing is always, I use my intelligence to understand. So to try to picture what it looks like that my known is of myself and in itself is very difficult to imagine. The closest thing we have is the way we know ourselves. The way I know what's happening in my toes right now. It's not information I gather from the outside. It's me, it's in me, so I know what's happening in my toes. That's the closest thing we have. It's not perfect, but it's the closest thing we have. I know what's happening within me because it's me. And that's Hashem's knowledge of all the universe. That was Rambam's position. Maharal took issue with that because Maharal said, you're giving God definition. You're describing him as an intellectual being. Even though you're doing this whole dance, that his intellect is not like our intellect, because his intellect is one. It's not a composite, it's not made up of 3 parts, but it's all absolutely one, so his knowledge doesn't contradict his oneness. Great, fantastic, but you still gave God a definition. God is beyond definition, indescribable, and the idea of intelligence is in and of itself a creation. That is a creation. In the same way there's creation called tables, creation called sun and moon, there's a creation called intelligence. And there's no reason to ascribe to God intelligence as a inherent part of his personality in the same way, God forbid, you wouldn't make the table a part of his personality. He created tables, he created intelligence. He's not to be defined by anything. Completely undefinable. Beyond all definition.
But was the Rambam actually defining him that way, or he was?
Yeah, that's how Rambam describes him.
That's how he describes. Okay.
That's how he describes God's oneness.
Okay.
As this absolute oneness that transcends oneness of intelligence. Okay. Tzemach Tzedek came along and said, they're both true. Hashem remains transcendent, and of that we have belief, because you cannot know that which is transcendent. As God decides to manifest in intelligence, he becomes one with his intelligence, and then we have some sort of knowledge of him as per Rambam. That's what Tzemach Tzedek told us. Okay? Now, parallel so far, so clear so far.
I lost the last bit out.
Okay, Tzemach Tzedek is telling us, the author of this book that we're reading, that both are true.
Okay.
It's true that Hashem is beyond all definition, and we cannot know that. So I cannot explain it because it's beyond definition. That's the whole point. So whatever words I use, I'm failing to describe it. So I have faith, emunah, in accepting that that's what it is. But the fact that God knows and He's intelligent and He understands everything, even though that intelligence is beyond my intelligence because it's absolutely one, but I can still say words about it. So about that, I don't have to have faith in God that way. I know God in that way. I have some sort of understanding of it. Yeah? Okay, that's what Tzemach Tzedek told us. Now, paralleling that, the Tzemach Tzedek introduced another dispute on the Kabbalistic side. So this, if you want, was on like the philosophical side, Rambam and Maharal. And now the Tzemach Tzedek introduces, this is where we left off last time, a parallel dispute in the world of Kabbalah. And what we're going to do today, and we started to do last week, is to combine these two disputes. The dispute between Maharal and Rambam on the philosophical side, is God beyond definition, or is God an intellectual perfect oneness of intelligence? Perfect oneness of intelligence, or is it beyond all definition? And this new dispute that we're introducing between Rabbi David and Rabbi Menachem on the Kabbalistic end.
Who are those guys?
Rabbi David I don't know, but Rabbi Menachem is the famous Menachem Akanti, who we spoke about last time, teacher of the Arizal. But Rabbi David I don't know who Rabbi David is.
I'm just going to say the key. God actually means so much. So it would, just through common sense, you would think that when God decides to express Himself in means of intelligence, that this is what it refers to when, because the only thing we can compare ourselves to is something also tangible, right? We can't compare ourselves to the intangible because we are tangible. So the only way we can say God's image is if He chooses to express Himself.
Okay, so we'll get to all that, yeah. This is what we're working through, right? Quoting the Psukim is one thing, but trying to understand it is another. So we're working through that, but yes. Okay, so I see in the footnote here that Rabbi David is the Radvaz. The Radvaz.
It's like a contemporary of the Arizal.
15th and 16th century. So maybe a little bit earlier. A little bit earlier, perhaps. But not far behind the Arizal. I mean, not much earlier than the Arizal. Okay. No, sorry, the teacher of the Arizal was the Ramak, which is Moshe Cordovero. That's not Menachem Merkanti, that's somebody else, I'm sorry. I mixed up the two. Menachem Merkanti is not the same as Moshe Cordovero, the teacher of the Arizal. At any rate, okay.
Anyway, I remember you talking.
Yeah, that's the Ramak, a book called the Pardes, which we're going to introduce in a minute, which is going to synthesize between these two views of Rabbi Menachem and Rabbi David. Okay, so what's the dispute between Rabbi Menachem and Rabbi David? The dispute there is on the question of the relationship between what Kabbalah refers to as light and vessel. So light is the way Kabbalah describes pure energy, in the same way light really has no color. And then the vessel is the thing that the energy animates and then gives a color. So if you want to use physically light and vessel, because that's the analogy. So the light coming out of the light bulb, assuming it has a clear glass, doesn't have any color. When does the light take color? When it travels and bounces off this table and comes to my eye, now it has color. So the color is not in the light itself, but it's in the vessel, the table, that gives the light the appearance of that color. Right? Everything I see is light traveling and bouncing off those things and coming to my eye. And only when it bounces off that thing does it take on color. The light itself is beyond color. Yeah? That's or light versus vessel. The analogy we used last time, similar kind of analogy, which works to make a certain point, is electricity in appliances. Electricity doesn't care if you're cooking, if you're freezing, or if you're driving a car. It's irrelevant. It's just pure energy. The vessel in which it's going to manifest is going to determine the way in which that energy is going to present itself, either by making something cold because it's in a freezer or making something hot because it's in an oven. But the electricity is the same. You can have the same electricity running through in the freezer that can then run through an oven. It's not going to make a difference. Right? So why is this analogy used? This analogy is used precisely for our problem that we're discussing, which is God beyond definition versus definition. So the light, Hashem himself, or let's just say, before we get to say the words Hashem himself, the light is beyond definition, but only once it goes into the vessels of kindness, intelligence, wisdom, strength, now that light takes on a certain form. the Or and the Keli, the light in the vessel. Clear? That's the analogy Kabbalah uses. That's why it uses this analogy, because it helps us appreciate that on the one hand, it remains beyond definition, while at the same time, it expresses it in definition. The same with the light is beyond definition, beyond color, but then it manifests into my eye in multiple colors. Because it bounces off all these different kalim, it bounces off all these different vessels. Right?
But light is already something that you can define, so I'm not...
Yes, so we cannot find something in our world that doesn't have definition. By definition, we cannot find something that doesn't have definition. We have to find analogies that have definition. So it's an analogy. It's not a perfect analogy, because no analogy would be perfect, because everything in every analogy is going to have definition. But at least it gives us some sort of sense, because light doesn't have color. It has definition, yes, but it doesn't have color, and then it manifests color when it hits the vessels. So it gives us some inkling, some idea, right? Okay. So the dispute between Rabbi David and Rabbi Menachem is as follows. The question is, does the character of the vessel actually shape the light itself? Once the light bounces off the table, is the light now the color of the table? So in the physical analogy, the answer is no. The light is not the color of the table. It's still clear, but it's projecting to me the color of the table, right? But in the analog, in the same which would be true of electricity. Electricity is actually more so. Electricity definitely, the electricity itself, good morning, electricity itself definitely doesn't become the application that it's powering. The electricity does not become heat because it's heating up an oven, and it just does not become freezing because it's heating up because it's operating a freezer. So there, certainly, the light remains completely non-defined by the vessel. Right? So that, in one view, whose view is that? That was the view of Rabbi Menachem, that the light of Hashem himself takes on no form, even as it powers those forms. Like the electricity takes on no form doesn't take on the form of the thing that it's powering. So Hashem's essence remains transcendent, and then it just operates these vessels of kindness, wisdom, intelligence. That mirrors Maharal. Maharal, who said God is beyond definition, creates something called intelligence. The light remains transcendent, non-defined. Hashem himself remains non-defined, even as he powers and operates kindness, intelligence, wisdom, strength, etc., all the different vessels, all different kalim. That's Rabbi Menachem's view. Whereas Rabbi David said, no, once the light invests itself in that keli, it takes on the form of that keli. That's Rabbi David's view. So which means the light itself is chesed, not just the vessel. Via the vessel, the light itself now became chesed, or intelligence. So with light, it works better than electricity, because when I look at the table, the light is a color. Even though in essence you can separate that the particles of light are not actually the color brown, but nonetheless, when I look around the room, let me put it this way, I never see clear light. Definitionally, good morning, right? I never ever see clear light. The transcendent light that we talk about, I never see it. Any light I ever see is colored light, because it's bouncing off something. Even the color of the white snow, it's still white, it's still a color, right? I never ever see the light in its absolutely pure. Good morning. Oh, here. Turn 4 pages. You never ever see absolute clear light. We never do. So the light always, certainly in our experience, takes on the color of the thing that is bouncing off. We don't see clear light, by definitionally, right? We see through the clear light. Any light I'm seeing is white, brown, red, whatever the colors are around the room. Right? So that would be more like Rabbi David's view. He says, once the light is in the vessel, it takes on the form of the vessel. And if the light itself is Chachma, that would be more like Rambam, who says that Hashem himself becomes one with intelligence. This is where we left off last time. We clear?
Yeah, but it also is saying that Hashem has a change, which is...
This is the balance we're doing here, right? So it's like a blanket. You pull it this way, you uncover your toes. You pull it that way, you uncover your shoulders, right? So it's like when you say that Hashem remains beyond definition, okay, then that means when I say God's kind, he's not actually being kind because he's not there, because he's beyond definition. But then when I say Hashem is actually being kind, oh, he has a change. It's like you're constantly tugging between the two, and that's the dance we're doing here,
So
which is
Torah talks about Hashem as if also the fact that he's a he,
exactly.
The whole Torah makes it
Sound like Hashem has definitions: angry, happy, right? How do we square that with the fact that Hashem is non-transcendent, non-changing? That's exactly the struggle here. Precisely the struggle that all these philosophers are dealing with. Rambam, Maharal, David, Kabbalah, they're all trying to resolve this issue, and we're working through all the various different details. So we're going to be going back and forth. Hashem is transcendent, completely detached. No, he's invested. He's detached, he's invested. He's detached, he's invested. Right? We're constantly going in this dance. Okay, so that's where we are right now. And now let's see, Tzemach Tzedek is going to introduce the Ramak, which brings us closer to a synthesis between the two.
Is there a
Clear?
when you are completely beyond that? By definition, it means you can also be completely in with at the same time.
That's true. That's a big part of this is thinking, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's correct. Yes, it's not. That's true. Let's understand how we get there. Yeah.
I just like by its pure definition, not a Chassidus thing. It's just like a
No.
If
You could argue it either way. You could argue it either way. You can make the argument.
Because the Maral is saying it stays separate. That's what I'm saying. But his separateness, because it's hard to, because again, when you're defining it by light, you're giving it already physicality when it's not. He's saying it's always...
Light is an analogy. He's not describing God as light, God forbid. It's an analogy.
I understand.
And we're using an analogy because we have no other thing to do but
But
analogies.
that's why I'm saying that light, in theory, if it's purely, completely, always, so it can be in both places at the same time. So I'm saying it can be...
Yes and no, we'll work through that.
Because it's not connected.
Yeah. We'll work through that, yes. But, okay.
I'm just going to think that's Moral's...
No. Maral would argue that no matter what it does, it's not becoming any of the things it's doing. No matter what it's doing, it's not becoming those things.
So how does
The same way the light is bouncing around all the colors and never becomes any color. So no matter what it does, it's always transcendent to those things.
So how does he
Right? Which means it's
explain the
projecting these things, but it's not actually doing these things. Sorry?
world? So how does he explain the world, the existence of the world?
That's how he explains it. That this unchanged light is projecting all these various different tools. But none of those things are him in any way, shape, or form. In the same way, the light is not any color, even though it's projecting to you millions of colors.
So he believes that God is like more separate.
Whereas Rambam was talking about God as he one with his intelligence, so he truly knows he's in it. Right? This is the conundrum. Either God's transcendent and he's not really doing it, or he's in it and he's not really transcendent. It's like this, we're stuck. That's what it's like. It's a blanket. You're constantly pulling back and forth. Right? Either he's infinite or he's finite, or he's finite or he's infinite. Which one is it? Yeah? Okay, this is what we're working through. The tension between this thing is healthy. Even after we come to the conclusions of the Tzemach Tzedek, the tension's still going to remain. And you're supposed to have that tension. If you don't, it means you don't understand it. So, like if it's all neatly squared, we're not getting it. Either we're not getting the infinite or we're not getting the finite because you cannot square it neatly. It's going to remain tense. Right? And in the language of, they say for Yitzira, it's Rotzai V'Shuv. It's going back and forth, right? It's going and coming and going and coming. Because there's an inherent tension between finite and infinite. It cannot be squared. Even as it's squared, it's going to remain tense. Right? Even when you stuff the infinite into the finite, there's still going to be tension. This is infinite, this is finite. Which one is it? Right? Okay. So let's work through it now. So again, we have these two views. We're using the Kabbalistic language now, which parallels Maral, Rambam, which was more philosophical language. And the Kabbalistic language is, does the light take on the form of the Keli? Or does light remain transcendent to the Keli, and that's the Keli is just a tool by which God operates these things, but the light, Hashem himself never takes on the form or takes on the definitions of the Keli, of the character he happens to be operating. So now let's see. So middle of the page, if you turn the page, okay, we have the page ready? Okay, so middle of the page, where it says Ach. Ach, however, I'm going to try as best I can just to translate directly because the Tzemach Tzedek is quite elaborate here, and his words themselves are explanatory. I'll interject with explanation, but I want to try to stick to his words directly because he repeats himself as if he's giving a class here because you have to work through it in your mind. And he helps you do that with his own words as opposed to just telling it to you and work it out yourself. He takes you through the process. So, we can explain the view of Maharal / Rabbi Menachem, that God remains transcendent, but we can still make it work with the idea that God is invested in the vessel, as Ramak states. V'hu ha'emes, and this is the proper way to understand it. Namely, sha'asfira seim atzmos v'kelim. The sfira is not, right, the dispute was which one's the sfira, which one is the character. Is it the light that has the character, thanks to the keli? Or is the keli the character and the light just animating it? To which the Tzemach Tzedek says, actually, quoting Ramak, the svira, the character, is in the combination of the two. The essence, the atzmos, the light, and the keli, and the vessel itself. Ratzolam, meaning to say, Kizu hanacham u'kiyemes, it is a fundamental established truth, as the Maharal earlier stated, as we quoted before from the Maharal, God's essence is a non-defined transcendent being. That's true. That's a fact. And it cannot be grasped in the realm of intelligence. Is infinitely transcendent from any definition. And intelligence, is brought into being by him. It doesn't define him. He caused and created that there should be something called intelligence. And that's called the vessel of intelligence, of wisdom. And within the vessel of intelligence shines the light of Hashem's truth and essence, which remains a non-defined simple entity. Because the light that projects from God himself retains the character of the source of the light, God himself. So God himself and the light it projects, that light will remain non-defined, just like he himself is non-defined. And this light, it gives life to that vessel. And it is the one that does the action through the vessel. So in other words, like this. Okay, let's see how he says it. I mean to say, it is the light that has intelligence through the vessel of intelligence. And knows creation through the vehicle of das, of knowledge. And does kindness through kindness. What he's trying to say is as follows. As opposed to saying, if the light takes on the form of the vessel, and we want the light itself to be the one doing the intelligence, because we want God to be invested in intelligence, we want God to be invested in kindness, so it's more intimate connection, right? He's doing it. If that's the case, he's taking on the definition. That was the problem we had before. So the response is, okay, the vessel is doing it. The light doesn't take on the definition. The Tzemach Tzedek saying, actually, you can have both. You can actually have both. It is the light, non-defined, doing a defined thing. Who is the one that's doing kindness? Not the vessel. The light is doing the kindness. That non-defined light is doing kindness. And yet, it's only through the vessel that it does it. Using the analogy of light. What is the brown that's in my eye right now? Not the table. The light. The light is the brown that's in my eye. And yet, that light will only project brown if it bounces off a table. But who is the actual brown? Not the table. In my mind, the table's not in my mind. It's the light that's in my mind. And yet that very light that's bringing the brown to me in my eye is not brown. Even though it is the one that's bringing me that brown. So the light remains non-defined even as it projects very defined color. So Hashem himself is the kind one. He's the one doing kindness. He is the one doing understanding. He is the one knowing. And yet as he's doing all those things, he remains non-defined by any of those.
You have to repeat that.
He's going to repeat himself. He's going to give us an analogy, right? But let's think of the analogy of light here. The image in my head is what? Which image is in my head? The table is not in my head. Literally, that's how physically light works. That's how vision works. Light travels, bounces off the table, comes into my eye, and my brain interprets it, right?
This is not light.
Sorry?
Cassandra's
It is light.
This is a reflection.
Correct, but the light travels and bounces off the table. Literally. That's physically how it works. Light travels from the light bulb, bounces off the table, and comes into my brain. So what's in my brain? Not the table. The defined table that's in my mind right now that I'm looking at is not the table. The table is not in my head. The table exists here. So, but where does the table... So what image is in my mind? The light. So all the definitions that I'm seeing, the red and green grapes and all that, is not the grapes themselves. It's the light that I'm seeing. Now that light that I'm seeing in my head is not red or yellow.
I'm talking about the image.
But what is an image physically?
Light.
It's light that travels from the thing and comes into my mind, right? So the image that's in my mind, that's all colored, is not actually colored. It's the light, which is non-colored, giving me color. So it's not like the grape is giving me color. The light's giving me color. But the light gives me color through the grape. So who's doing kindness in the world? Hashem is doing kindness in the world. It's truly him. And yet he's not defined by the kindness he's doing you. In the same way the light is not defined by the green that it's bringing to me from that grape. Following? It's a very subtle idea, but we're going to follow this. He's going to give us more analogy in a moment. But you get the essence of this? Okay, let's develop it more. Let's see. Sorry?
It's a good analogy.
That's the essence of why we're using light and vessel. To make this point. That it's Hashem himself doing all those things. Kindness, intelligence, knowing. And yet, even when he does those things, through these various different mediums, none of those define him, even though it's him, while he's still the one doing it.
So the vessels have no light, really. It really is God's essence.
Correct. So it's not the Keli doing chesed to you. It's Hashem doing chesed to you.
Through another person.
Through the Keli, through this vessel called.
So what's the what are you referring, like when you say kindness, intelligence?
So Hashem creates this thing called kindness, and then does kindness through this creation called kindness to you.
So where does like each and every person's like bechira and all? Like,
Okay, that's where we get to. She's talking about we're creating Hashem's image, right? So these Kalim are the image that we're created in. So he created kindness by which he operates kindness, so we have kindness. He created intelligence by which he operates intelligence, so we have intelligence. Mirroring that, right? So, but the point here is that these things he created, intelligence, kindness, strength, judgment, all the various different things that he created are don't define him, yet he operates through them. And even as he operates through them, they don't define him. In the same way, the light is bringing me green and red, and yet the light is not defined by the very green and red that it's bringing me.
It's like a tool, you could use it for anything.
A tool. So he's going to use the example of a tool soon. So let's see. Very good. Okay, so after this big paragraph there, on the page, the result of this is, thanks to the vessel, there now becomes an image, a defined image, in the non-defined light. Which this non-defined light is his essence. That causing the light to now be defined by a specific image, by a specific quality. Whether it's intelligence, understanding, kindness, compassion, whatever the particular image is, it's now the light that's taking on that image, even whilst as the light remains transcendent of that image. So what we get from this is, it's not as if he knows something outside of himself. That was another problem. If Hashem is projecting and going into intelligence, this is one of the problems of Maharal. Maharal made God transcendent. And then he created this thing called intelligence and knows. So he knows from something outside of him. That's a change. He uses this thing called intelligence to know. That's outside. But now we solve that problem. Because it's not the intelligence that knows. It's he, the same non-defined transcendent he, who knows through that defined thing, remaining transcendent. So it's not a knowledge that comes from outside of him. It's still a knowledge from him. Because he is the one that knows that. Through this vessel called knowledge. But it's still him. It's not an entity outside of him that knows. It's he himself that knows. Right? As he explains, because the achievement of the vessel is not truthfully associated with the vessel. It's only to the light that's in it. In other words, the color green is not associated to the grape. It's to the light that's bringing me the green. So it's the intelligence that's being projected into creation is not attributed to the vessel. It's attributed to God who's working through the vessel.
But where did the grape is green? I understand the light is making.
Okay, so you're asking
where did it come from?
Because you're asking the question where the Keli came from.
Yeah.
Good, we'll get to that later.
Okay.
Where the Keli came from, because right now we'll just say it's a creation. Hashem created these notions, these concepts called intelligence, kindness,
right.
And then he's using those things. Where they came from, we'll get to soon, because that's a good question.
Yeah.
Sorry? That is the
important piece of the puzzle.
Yes. We're going to get to that, yeah. Okay, but first he wants to explain to us how Hashem's truth operates through these vessels without changing his truth, which is what he's trying to know.
Yeah.
So top of the next page, on the left side, Shahu ha'atzmas hameir b'hem. That is the undefined essential light that operates through these vessels. V'hevi shom mashal hazeh. The Ramak brings an example. Here's our second analogy. Beyond light and vessel, new analogy. Kamai, for example, shachayis hanefesh hamelubish b'guf. The vitality, he translates nefesh as soul, but soul makes it seem like it's a spiritual something. We mean the life of your sentience. You feel alive, your consciousness. Nefesh, not neshama. Nefesh, your consciousness.
Life force.
The life force in you. Shugam came pashut be'erech haguf. That relative to the body is also non-defined. The body is very defined, It has a certain amount of centimeters it takes up, and a certain amount of strength, and a certain bunch of needs, physical needs, food, drink, sleep, and so on. But the life force that's in it, relatively speaking, is not defined. It's the battery, like the electricity. It just animates the body to jumpstart it and make it operate. Right? So now, when the life force of my vitality is shining into my eye, is operating in my eye, now I can see. And when that same life force now operates the leg, now it takes on the form of capacity to walk. If so, the difference between one part of the body and the other is in the physical body. The keli, the vessel, the ayin, the eye versus the foot. But the activity of walking and the activity of seeing is attributed to who? The foot? No. Truthfully, it's attributed to the life force that's in the foot. Right? It's associated with the energy that's in these vessels, shehu pashit, which remains undefined. In other words, I do a lot of things. I see, I walk, I talk. I do all these things. It's not a different eye that sees and a different eye that walks. It's the same eye. And who is that eye? It's a non-defined livingness. And when the livingness is in the eye, it sees. But who sees? Not the eye. I see. Levi, you sees. I walk. So here we have again the same idea, where you have a non-defined entity that operates specific definitions, and when it operates specific definitions, it is the one doing those things, and yet not defined by the very things it's doing and operating. I am not a seer, but I see. I'm not a walker. I walk. It's not like my life is defined by seeing and walking. Right? I think I once mentioned this before. Chassidus uses, not here, but elsewhere, Chassidus uses this analogy and takes it even farther. How do you know that the soul, that the life force itself is beyond all definition of the body itself? Because if, God forbid, someone cannot see, they can still have children who see. Right. Even two parents that are blind can have children who see. Because the parents themselves contain all capacity for livingness of humans. It just so happens to be that for whatever reason, the keli, the vessel of these particular people's eyes, cannot operate the life force that's in it. But the life force that they're projecting still that they contain includes the capacity for vision, and if their children can see perfectly. Right? Because their life force is not defined by what they do and don't do. It's an essential human livingness, beyond the definitions of the particulars of what a human does. But when that livingness is in the body, it now does the very specific things that it operates. Not the eye seeing. It's not the physical eye that sees. It's Levi that sees through the eye. It's Levi that walks through my feet, remaining undefined by the very things that I'm operating. Okay?
Could that be said for everything in existence? Like, this table exists due to the life force within it?
That's
or is
Hashem.
that just the keli itself?
Precisely. That's Hashem in all of creation. So Hashem is operating all of creation, and yet not defined by the very creation he's operating. You back that up, that's the Kalim. Hashem is kind through the medium of kindness. It is him that is kind, and yet not defined by the very kindness he's doing. That's the depth of this analogy of Oyer and Keli, or the life force of the body itself.
So you could say that the body itself, even just the body without the life force inside of it, is also being animated by something that it...
In the fact that it exists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
That's a great point.
But
It's
that would be the analog, not the analogy. That would already be the analog. That God is operating my physical body, but that's not the analogy. Right? It's the analog, not the analogy. Okay, so let's continue then. So Upoil Pula Shainim. So again, I'm trying to state his words because he's going to elaborate. Upoil Pula Shainim. It, the non-defined life force, does various activities. Machmashini Kalim, because of the various different organs, the Kalim that it operates in. The Imkal Zahu Upoil. Nonetheless, it's not the Kalim, it's not the organs that are doing these things. It's the life force doing these things. The Imkain, if so, the same thing is true of God above. The fact that God knows through the medium of a vessel called knowledge, das, this knowledge, it's not the vessel that knows, it's God that knows. It's the light and energy of Hashem's essence that shines in that knowledge that knows. Just as my vision is from the light of my livingness that projects into the eye. Well, let me say the gufa ayim, not because of the body of the eye that sees. If it was the vessel that knows, not God's knowledge, not God's essence that knows through that keli, then God's knowledge would be from outside of him. There's he, there's knowledge, and he knows from that knowledge. But now that we say it's not the knowledge that knows, it's he that knows through knowledge. So it's now no longer a knowledge outside of him. Because it's from him, from his essence, not from the vessel. But it's from him. It's only that. The very fact that this non-defined essential truth of Hashem takes on the form and image of a certain particular character, to take on the form of knowing, for example, it's because he effectuated knowledge through the vehicle of knowledge, which is the vessel of das, to know something that's outside. And therefore, there is no true change to him, even as he projects to know through knowledge. The light, the transcendent essential light, did not change because it happened to project through certain vessels. He remains non-defined as he always was non-defined. So he keeps going back and forth. The intent here really is only to say, the change is the activity that this non-defined energy did. But the non-defined energy remains non-defined energy. That this non-defined energy did a particular activity called knowing through the vehicle of knowledge, by way of example, analogy. This knowledge is an actual activity. And that's what gives life to all of creation, the fact that he knows them all.
Question?
Yeah.
So in regards to us with the analogy between the light, our essence of who we are. So when we learn something, so we have affected a change in our brain. And
Correct.
Our brain is the external part, but
Yeah.
how does it like? So it's like when you go through your whole life and you and your garments become, I'm just saying, but the essence of you, that light, does that never change?
Oh,
so
it's a good question. So it's a good question. So the answer to that would probably be, the answer will be more understood once we answer the earlier question, which is where did the Kalim come from? We'll get the answer to that better. But for now, it would seem that my essential self didn't change because I know new things. My knowledge changed because I knew new things. But my essential self, which the light, the vitality that gave, the livingness that gave vitality to my mind to understand didn't change. Because that same livingness can now go to my arm and make it right. So that the livingness that gives vitality to my body didn't change. That's the analogy we're using now. Because as far as the Keli goes, I do change. My intelligence, I got new information. So that's what I was saying. The answer will come better when we know where the Kalim come from. But as far as the analogy here goes, the essential livingness that provides vitality to all these vehicles, even the one that knows and changes by knowledge, the essential vitality did not change. It's going to go to the hand and make it right, or go to the foot and make it walk.
But when you do a mitzvah with these kelis,
Okay, before we get to mitzvah, we're doing a mitzvah.
Okay.
We're just trying to understand that we're using an analogy to describe Hashem, right? Before we get to doing a mitzvah. Sorry?
The life force, is it the equivalent of a soul or not really? It's not the neshama. We're not talking.
It is he uses the word nefesh, not neshama. And I think I once spoke about the difference between nefesh and neshama. Because you could use the word soul, but when you use the word soul in English, it invokes certain ideas, and it would be lost if we use that word. And so even though in the translation here they use the word soul, and it's not incorrect. It's correct. It's correct.
Yeah.
The nefesh is my livingness. My livingness is from my soul. But when you use the word soul, people think of like their spirituality. And he's not talking about your spirituality. He's talking about the vitality of your body, your sentience. You tap your fingers and you feel yourself. That's what it means. Which is why I'm using the word, your livingness. Nefesh rather than neshama. That's the Hebrew word he uses. Even though they translate it both as soul. Anyway. Okay. You tell me when we have to stop. Right? Okay.
10:30. 10:30.
Okay. He's going to keep on going about this for quite a bit, so maybe... Let's go a few more lines, because I want to get to the analogy that you mentioned before.
tools.
The tools, exactly. The nifla, so top of the page on the left side. The nifla idea are atzmas hapashat. The achievement, the activity is being done not by the vessel, but by the essential, non-defined vitality, light of Hashem Himself. It achieved that activity through this particular vessel. And therefore, even though this activity comes from His power and strength, which is a simple, non-defined, true entity, nonetheless, the activity that it does can be defined, even though it's being operated by that which is non-defined. Because of the vessel that is being employed to achieve that particular activity. For example, to your analogy, so first we use the example of the livingness in my body. The livingness that's in my body can operate any part of my body. It is the one that's walking. It is the one that's feeling, seeing, hearing, and yet it's not defined by walking, seeing, hearing, feeling. Now he's giving you a different analogy. A person uses his hand. The person uses his hand to operate various different tools. He'll use a pen to write, and he'll use a knife to cut. So who cut the chicken? The knife cut the chicken? No one says that. Your hand cut the chicken, and your hand wrote. But it's not as if your hand is a writer, or your hand is a chicken cutter. It cut chicken, but it doesn't change the essential hand, even though it is the one that's doing it. So it's God who knows, even though He didn't become knowledge. It's God who acts kind, even though He didn't become kindness. In the same way, my hand can cut, can write, and can do 1,000 other activities, and yet it didn't become defined by the various activities it's doing. So relative to the actions, that my hand is non-defined. It is defined, it's a hand. But relative to the various different activities it does, it isn't defined by them, even though it's the one that's doing it, via different tools. Well, then as we share pullahs, and the same thing is true of all other activities Hashem does. He does kindness through chesed, through the vehicle of chesed. The result of this is it's the power of activity through the essential light that's non-defined through chesed. It remains non-defined and simple. And the very fact that the activity happens to be of a particular nature, kindness, is because now he picked up the tool called chesed. The same thing is true of any other emotional attribute or quality. And all this refers to the activities that God does within creation. He acts in creation through 10 different tools called spheres. Shehem, which they are Chabad, Chagas, Nihim. The word first, that's a Malchus. Okay, we can stop over here because it's going to continue with more language. And then it's going to be the 2 pages of reiterating this because he really wants us to work through it and think about it and think about it and think about it. So he's going to keep on doing this, and then he's going to answer the question, okay, so where did the Keli come from? How did the Keli get here? He's a non-defined entity, and then he's using vessels to do things. But where do these vessels come from? Where do these tools come from? How do they arrive? And what's their relationship with God? That's going to come up, God willing, at the end of this chapter. Okay, it's great to get back into it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with Hashem's help, we'll continue.
Yeah, I feel like we just went really deep. That was beautiful.
Thank you. I mean, on behalf of the Tzemach Tzedek, thank you.
It's so nice to start the day.
But if I just read it without hearing you, I would be lost. But
Well, I thank you. I had teachers, thank God, as well.